afternoon. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Clocking In with PilieroMazza, Labor and Employment News for Government Contractors. I'm Sarah Nash, and I'm here with my partner,
Nicole Atala.
Hey, Nicole. And today we're talking about some fun updates in the National Labor Relations Act world. So, Nicole, can you tell us about a recent board decision that has some pretty big implications for independent contractors in the world of the NLRA?
Right. So this case is called Atlantic Opera, and most of you don't care about that. Most of you care about, like, why are we talking about independent contractors in the National Labor Relations Act? Because the National Labor Relations Act is union land, and I am not in union land. Or if you are, you're like, why do I care? Because independent contractors aren't covered by the NLRA. Well, that's what this is all about. So you may or may not know that unlike regular jurisprudence in the United States, where courts tend to look at past cases and say, we have to, kind of look at what past courts have said, and we should probably follow that. And we only deviate that when we have really good reasons to deviate from that. The board is not built that way. The board is almost, dare I say, political in nature, in that it tends to swing from administration to administration, depending on who's at the board. And so what you see here is a classic who is covered by the act. And that was the principal question in this case. There was a case under the Trump administration that kind of reset and made the standard very narrow. And the standard during the Trump administration was basically entrepreneurial opportunity, like can someone experience profit and loss? And all of the other factors in the independent contractor analysis really arose out of that principle. They were analyzed in light of that principal factor, right? And in this case, they said, no, we're going to go back to the standard of old and say that it's really all of these factors taken together that make up an independent contractor analysis. They're not worded the same way as you might see it under like a Department of Labor independent contractor analysis or an IRS independent contractor analysis. That's what's difficult about independent contractors. You can be an independent contractor under or have or hire independent contractors under one standard, and under another standard, they might be viewed as employees. So you always have to be looking at state and federal law and not just one federal law or not one state law. And this is no exception. So in the case at hand, they were exploring whether or not these individuals could be a part of a unit or organized. But it really is broadly about if these people engage in protected and concerted activity, they complain about their pay, right? Can they complain to the board as a way to remedy their concerns? And in this particular case, they said, look, if they fit this like multi-factor test about, length of time of employment, there are all these factors, right? You've heard them all before. Like, do they have their own equipment? Do they take direction from you? Do they work for you essentially full time? Have they been working for you for like 15 years? They have no other clients. All of those things are going to be factors. And it really gives this case kind of moves the board back to having very broad discretion to decide, yeah, we think it kind of looks like a duck, and we're going to call them independent contractors and give them access to all of the remedies the board might offer for whatever conduct we're talking about.
So what are the consequences if you have the board or an investigator find that your independent contractor is actually an employee under the NLRA? Does that mean that you're at risk for all those other laws like Title VII, DOL wage and hour, state requirements? Like, what does that do with those other laws? How do they interact with one another?
Well, the board's not going to have jurisdiction over all of those things, although, never say never, right? The way that agencies kind of share information with each other now is through these, basically these joint memoranda. Say, hey, we're going to work with each other on these things. The IRS and DOL have one, and they say, hey, we can talk to each other and tell each other that we think that there's an issue with this employer, for example. But most of the time, we don't see it bleed over like that. There's no no indication that I've seen in practice that just because you get an audit or complaint in one agency, that it's necessarily going to be that the DOL is going to show up at your door in 3 days and conduct an audit, or the state unemployment office is going to show up and conduct an audit, right? But what it should tell you is that there is an indication that you should take another look at it, right? And so we're still asking the same questions we would ask in any other case, like, has there really been protected concerted activity here, right? Is this the appropriate definition of a unit? So we're going to ask the employer, the employee IC question, as well as all of the other questions that we would normally ask when we're looking to see if the board has jurisdiction over a particular matter. But in the world, especially of government contracting, there is a world of independent contractors out there where you show up on site one day and there's well, I've been an independent contractor for 15 years. I'm certainly not going to change for you. And of course, they're the key people that you need to hire on this effort, right? So clients call us all the time and say, well, what do I do here? Or I'm a really small business and I can only afford to hire independent contractors. It mitigates my risk. Well, then we have a conversation about what is risk mitigation. And maybe you're not mitigating your risk as much as you think you are if you get one of these adverse findings right at the gate as a small business. So this is very much an issue that federal government contractors are dealing with day in and day out. But, that's a very long way of answering your question, Sarah, which is it doesn't mean you're going to get an audit, but it should be an indication that at least one agency doesn't buy your line that they're independent contractors, and waiving an IC agreement, and that you can have every waiver 8 ways to Sunday in that agreement, and that's not going to help you with these types of agencies that really will throw your agreement in the trash. They're looking at a totality of the circumstances evaluation.
Absolutely. It could also be a gateway complaint. If you have employees who are organizing or independent contractors who are organizing, and they start asking questions about, what kind of classification they are, whether it's appropriate, maybe they're going to be looking at other agencies too and look for other employee rights. So it could be sort of a snowball effect.
Right.
But
once they're organized, they're going to negotiate as if they're employees, right? I mean, they're at that point in time, you're probably not going to have to worry as much about the Department of Labor because if they have a chance to organize, if that's what the issue is, then you can kind of put that one to bed.
Great. Well, I think that sort of sums it up. It's just a good reminder, right, that agencies are really taking a closer look at these types of classifications. States too. You've got a lot of states that are cracking down the classification issue, and we sound like a broken record sometimes, but it's a good opportunity to look at your independent contractors, look at your classifications, and make sure that they're compliant, not just with state law, not just with DOL wage and hour law, but with other agencies as well, like the NLRA.
Right.
Thanks.
All right.
Join us next time.